Hi everyone, this is Andrew Baronski, and this video is Brightspace Assessment Part 3, specifically looking at assessing with curriculum expectations and the Gradebook Mastery View. Alright, so let's get started and dive in. I'm going to jump into my demonstration class here. Now, somewhat unintuitively, I'm going to start looking at content actions just very quickly. There are a couple different ways to add your expectations within Brightspace to your classroom. And what we're going to be getting at here via assessment and via the grades tool, which you're not going to see this master view here right now. You can see my options in my gradebook. What we're going to be looking at is the new as of this time, Gradebook Mastery View in Brightspace. I'm really excited about this tool. I think it offers lots of great opportunities for teachers and students, and it kind of maybe a different way of looking at an assessment instead of just focusing on the numbers. What I do want to highlight is you will not see the option for Mastery View here in the grades tool in Brightspace until you've added expectations to your class. So that's what we're starting looking at here. Once you've added expectations and you come to the grades tool, you will now see an option to toggle back and forth between grades and mastery view. Good to know about this too. You can still assess the way you have been. You can use grading categories, numbers, or levels the way you have been, assign that and kind of get that feedback here with your traditional gradebook. But you can also use expectations on top of that or in place of it. It's up to you. So you can run both or one or the other and get that feedback and that information via the mastery view. Going back to my class homepage here. So to start, you are not going to have expectations added to your class. You need to add them yourself. There are two ways to do that, and we're going to look at both here. Now, while this video is focused on assessment, we're going to cover one piece with content here quickly. So if I click on content in my class, you can see your unit folders here. And if you haven't noticed this before, you're going to see up here in the top left in the new content view. And if you're not seeing this content view very quickly, you can always click the drop down arrow and switch over to the newer experience if you want, which is the one I'm on here. In this experience, you're going to see this 0% expectations coverage. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring me over to the expectations coverage page. I'll see here they're not available because I have not assigned any to this course. Doing this via the content area will give you tracking if you choose to add expectations to your unit folders or subject folders or content pages. You can track to see where you have covered expectations and which ones you haven't from a content experience. Okay, so this is we're going to run separately from assessment, which we're going to be focused on in this video. Right from here though, up in the top right, you'll see an option for add or remove expectations. Now if I click that, it's going to pop me out to the expectations page in this course. So this is one way to get at this. Okay. Back in content, once I've added them, I'll see options for adding via the three dots to add expectations to my content folders or pages. I don't see that right now because I haven't added that as an option yet. Okay, so just good to keep in mind there. So again, I got that via 0% expectations here. What you'll see as you add expectations is that you'll see tracking for how many expectations you've covered from a teaching or pedagogy and a learning standpoint. Now, this is not related to assessment. Okay, that's one way to get at the expectations page and add them. The other way to get at that page is if I click the drop down arrow here in my course, and via going edit course or course admin, if you click on edit course, you're brought to a page that looks just like this. Now, if I scroll down to the assessment area, I'm going to see an option here for expectations. If I click it, it brings me right to that same page that I was in before from content. And I'll see I've got options here to add an expectation or import from Achievement Standards Network. Now, great thing for Ontario, all of the Ontario curriculum expectations are added into Brightspace for you to add to your class. You don't need to create these on your own, which is just brilliant. It's that kind of quick and easy thing, which we'll cover here in a moment. You also have the option to create custom expectations though. So you can use the overall and or specific expectations if you choose from your curriculum and add those in here right from the curriculum documents essentially via Brightspace, or you can create your own expectations to use. I'll highlight here and again throughout these few times, the way the Mastery View currently works is that there's a system setting for this for how you're going to track and assess by these on that assessment standpoint. And it's currently by levels in WRDSB. So to use this, you're going to be looking at assessing by level 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then getting data and feedback on that for those expectations. Okay, that is a system setting across the school board. You currently cannot customize that. That is something that D2L may add in the future, where you can customize that class by class or teacher by teacher. Currently, though, it's set by the organization. So in this case, the school board. And it's levels 1 to 4. Something to keep in mind. And again, for our kindergarten educators at the moment, not using levels, this is probably not a great option for you currently. Okay. So looking at this, if I click on add expectation, I can just type in whatever I want here. For our secondary educators, this might be an essential learning or your own language that you want to use for the overall expectations. As an example, for anyone else or for any of our educators, again, you create and just type in that custom expectation here in any way, shape, or form you want, and simply save it, and that will be an option in your expectations to use, which will make more sense when we get to adding them to our assignments, to portfolio, or to say to a discussion. I'm going to cancel this for now and instead click on Import from Achievement Standards Network here. This is again to go and find the Ontario curriculum expectations that are already in here for you and then add them to your class to track with. So I click on Import. It's going to bring up a pop-up here that looks just like this. Now, there's a lot in here, so you're going to click on Select Jurisdiction to start. And you can always just type in to find, so I'm just typing ON right now to find Ontario and bring me down to that. But you can just scroll down through it too. So you can see I also have the French version here. I'm going to click on Ontario. And then it kind of filters out for me. So now for subject area, I can see, okay, what I'm assessing by here. And you'll see lots of options. You find the specific subject area you're looking at. For this example, I'm going to go with English. And then you'll see I get some other options here now. So with this, I've got the Ontario curriculum here. I'm going to go with grades 9 and 10. You can see when it was last updated to make sure you've got the current version or year. And there may sometimes, if it was just recently at least recently written, you will see options for the years you want to choose. So I'm going to click here for the most recent. You can see it defaults over again, and I can even choose my level. So I'm going to say grade 9 and get that filter. So now I can see I've got two options here. I've got grade 9 academic English for 1D, grade 9 applied English for 1P. I can just click off a class and then click import, and it's going to import all the expectations for that for me, both the overalls and the specifics. I would recommend you don't do this personally. Again, it's up to you. I'm going to uncheck this and then click the arrow here to expand this out. Now I'll see the strands. So again, I can import an entire strand if I want, just by strands. Also personally would recommend not to do this. So I'm going to expand out, say, the oral communication strand, and then I'll see options here. So it's the overalls and specifics. You can choose what you want to import to your class. I personally would strongly recommend educators look at adding in each of the overalls and tracking the overall expectations and knowing that you're covering through the specifics, but not worry about tracking assessing that way. I personally would just find that unwieldy, but again, it's here as an option if you want. So I'm just gonna scroll here through and I can see the 1.4, 1.5. So scroll down really quickly. So I've got overall A2 for oral, overall A3, and I'm good there. Now I can continue on. So I've got the reading strand here. I've got B1, B2. I won't make you stick through all of this. Skip past B3, B3, and B4 for the overalls. If I keep scrolling here, I can see the strand for writing. So I've got C1, C2 for the overall, C3, and C4. Now, I won't go through this and show you this for the media strand too, but I would do that for media as well. So I have all the overalls in, and then I simply click down here, import selected expectations. Depending on the device you're using, if you're having trouble seeing this, you can use this arrow down here to kind of resize this. And you can, if you hover your mouse at the top and see this little 4 arrows icon pop up, I can click to drag this and move this up and down. So just be aware of that if you're having sizing issues on your device. When you've checked off the expectations you want to add, I'm going to go here and click import selected expectations. And now I'll see it comes over for me. It's organized by strand, which I really appreciate and like. And I can see which ones I've got in there. Okay, so I've got these here. Again, I also have the option at the bottom to add my own custom expectations to this to track by if I like. If I hover over the lock, I can see it's been imported, so I can't edit that. If I want to create my own customs, I could. I could copy here and then add an expectation and then do some tweaks if I wanted. Or if you want to remove something, simply click the drop down arrow beside the expectation, and then I can see delete it. Or look at how I'm ordering these, okay? So I've got my setup there. I've got my expectations in. I'm gonna go back to my demo class homepage here. Once I've got these added in, what do we do with them? So I'm gonna go back to content really quickly just so you're aware of this. Let's say here in Unit 1, on this slide deck, I was covering some expectations from a teaching standpoint. To add an expectation on the content side, I simply go to the 3 dots here in content in the top right, and now you'll see I have an option to view expectations. This wasn't here previously. It's here for me now because I've added it. So I'm going to click on view expectations, and then I see I haven't aligned any yet. So I'm going to click edit expectations alignment here. And then it populates my expectations for me. I can search for something specifically to find it if I like, or just scroll through. Now, if I was, say, covering the reading expectations here, I might check off B1, 2, 3, and 4, and click Save Changes. Okay, I can see now it's been added here. Now, if I close this off by clicking the X here in the top right, not a lot of change. Again, it's here. I can go back and I'd see that coverage, but you'll notice now that 0% in the top left here went to 36% for my expectations covered, letting me know I've covered 36% of my expectations. If I click on it, I get tracking for this. So I'll see my units across the top. So again, it's in the parent folder. Even though I put this on a specific activity, it's showing me just for that folder itself. And I can see which expectations have been covered in that folder and how many times. Okay, good to know there. I'm going to close this off and head back to my class homepage because really our focus here is on assessment. Now, so many ways that you can assess within Brightspace. One of the major pain points I find as an educator myself when I was working through my classroom was I've got information all over the place. How do I feel good about triangulating that assessment? How do I look at my observations, my conversations, and my products all in one place to really inform my professional judgment and feel good about assessment and feedback for my students? And how do I understand how they're progressing on the curriculum in my class? As an example, for English, if I have an essay, I might be assessing a variety of reading and writing expectations in that essay or that paragraph or that piece of writing. But if I just put a number on it, let's say they got 80 on it, it doesn't really inform me a lot of detail about how they performed. Gradebook Mastery View might be a really good option to kind of see those details. You'll notice now if I click on assessment and go to the grades tool, it has changed a little bit. This wasn't here before I added my expectations. I still have my traditional grades and gradebook here, but I also see this option for mastery now. Now if I click on mastery, I'm going to see the expectations I've actually added into my class. Now again, I haven't assessed any of these yet, but they're just there because I've added them to content. As you add in expectations, you'll see this across and your students listed here in a list for you. And you can look expectation by expectation for how your students are performing. We haven't added anything from an assessment standpoint yet, so there's nothing here. You also get a class overview for how your class as a group is performing on that overall expectation. I'm really excited about this. We're going to come back to look at this in more detail. I just wanted to highlight that once you add your expectations, it's there for you now. as a first example, I'm going to click on assessment and let's head over to an assignment. Okay. Now you'll see I've got some assignments set up here already, and with this little ribbon shows me it's been added to a grade item. Okay. I'm going to start off just a new quick assignment here. Now, if you want to go into details about how to create an assignment, please check out the previous part 1 and part 2 videos on Brightspace assessment. But very quickly here, let's go expectations assignment. Now, everything else here is the same, but now that I've added curriculum expectations to my class, I will now see a hyperlink here for expectations. If I click it, I get a pop-up which brings the expectations I've added to my class. I can see which class of expectations as a parent folder here. You can have multiple classes in this if you want. It can get a little unwieldy though, so think about how you want to go about using that. But you get this organization. If I want to find things quickly, I can collapse these or expand out. So as an example here, let's focus on writing. I'm going to check off C1, C2, C3, and C4 because my writing task here is going to cover all of the writing overall expectations. See, I've got 4 selected and click save. Okay, I can now hover over these and see these have been added to this assignment. Now, this will be for the Gradebook Mastery View not tracking. I can just leave it that. I don't need to add a grade to this. I can just level off these. You'll see what this looks like here in a moment. But I can, on top of this, use the gradebook as well. So if I also wanted to have this scored, I could say I'm also going to assess this out of 100 as an example and put it into my gradebook as well. Again, the formal gradebook versus the mastery view. So this here is going to tie to the gradebook that I'm using. This will tie into the mastery view. You can do both or one of the other. Okay. And I'm just going to make this visible for students and then click save and close and skip the rest of the settings here. If I want to go back to one I've already set up, say this essay as an example, if I click on edit folder, it's going to highlight, hey, some things are locked because you've already assessed that, put this out and collected things. You can see I've got a rubric added here. I'm going to click on expectations, however. And same thing, I said this is an essay, so I'm going to go here and check off the 4 overall expectations for writing. Click save. I can come back and add these after the fact, even with student work having been collected. I'm going to click save and close again. Now for this essay, I can see I've got one that's already been completed, I've already evaluated, and I've even returned that to the student. If I click on this essay, I can see the work here from the student. So I'm going to click in to look at what I've assessed here. Now you'll notice, okay, I can pull up the student work, I can preview that, I can see the overall feedback I've given, I can expand out the rubric, but you'll see now outcomes over here and it's added in those 4 overall expectations. So I can do this and even go back to student work, and now I can level these off for what I'm seeing from the student. Okay, so I've got those levels, the expectations are right here for me. I click update. I will now have tracking for that for this student with those levels, and that will go into the Gradebook Mastery View for me automatically. Okay, so really, really great feature there. You can go back and add this to student work, or just that you've collected already, or put it on to things as they're coming in. So that was the quick and fast of looking at this from an assignment standpoint, how to add it to new assignment folders, how to add it to previous ones, how it will show up for you there. You can add that specifically to expectations. We're going to look at how to add that to the portfolio tool as well, and also how to add that to discussions. If you think about, okay, I've got assignments, portfolio, and discussions. That's kind of my products, my observations, and my conversations. You can track and assess by your expectations and have all of that filter to the mastery view to see in one place for you and your students. I think this is brilliant and I'm really excited about it. Okay, so that was adding the expectations directly. You can also add expectations to a rubric you're using, however. So if I click on assessment here and click on rubrics, I'm going to start a new rubric here. And again, if you want to see the details of creating a rubric and the nitty-gritty, please go back to part 1 and part 2 videos on assessment to see that in detail. But I'm going to go expectations rubric here. Okay, now I can see here I've got my rubric. I've got lots of options for how I set this up. I'm going to go no score for this personally. I've got the analytic piece. I can see my criterion. Now, in the previous videos on rubrics, there's one thing that was missing. You did not see a hyperlink for expectations here. Now, once you've added expectations to your class, you'll see these as options within the rubric. So I can go here and click expectations, and then there's my view again. So say I was going to make this one about oral communication, speaking and listening. I could check off these three and add those. Now, what I would recommend is don't add more than one to a criterion. So I'm going to uncheck these two. I'm actually going to go here and highlight listening to understand and copy it. So I've got listening to understand checked off, the overall for this piece. I'm going to click align expectations. Now you'll see the color coding pops into your rubric automatically. This is really nice and will make more sense when we look at the Gradebook Mastery View, but there is a unique color scheme for each level that follows you throughout the system. I can see for criterion 1 now, which I'm going to paste in what I just copied, say, hey, this is the overall expectation of listening to understand. And if I hover down here, I can see A1 is checked off, and this is the full description of that overall expectation. I can go down here for criterion 2. I'm going to go speaking to communicate here, check that off and highlight this and copy and click align. Now, you're not playing with the display here. You might get this every now and then. I'm just going to refresh here. And it did get added in for me there too. So if you ever get an error like that, just refresh, you're probably good to go. And I'm going to paste in speaking to communicate. And now I've got that. I won't go into all the details of this rubric. If I go here for the third one, I'm just going to add this on really quick. And so every now and then you get this. The refresh didn't work, but I refresh, and now I can see that was added on as well. And I'm going to close off this rubric. Now I've got that rubric built out. Okay, so I've got this expectations rubric. So I can now add this rubric to an assignment and then assess via the rubric. And as I'm checking off those levels, that data and feedback will also go into the Gradebook Mastery View. So I can just add the expectations to the assignment itself, or I can add the rubric to that assignment, assess via the rubric, and those expectations that I've tagged off go into that data as well. This is my recommendation for maybe with your rubrics not adding more than one expectation to that criterion row, because if you add, say, 3 expectations, you still only have one choice for level. So if you choose level 3, it's going to show as a level 3 for each of those expectations. That's why I personally like separating them out criterion by criterion, but I'll leave that to you. Okay, so we've looked at the assessment here, how to add expectations specifically to assignment. Or again, if you look at our previous videos, you can add a rubric to an assignment where the rubric has the expectations and then level that rubric, and that same levels will come across. Again, with this, keep in mind, because it's set for levels 1 to 4 with the expectations, you're going to have a level 1 to 4 rubric or 4 to 1 rubric. Okay, so keep that in mind. The next one I want to highlight here, so that, again, that's our assessments or products, is what about our observations, conversations? So I'm going to click on portfolio here, which I personally think is more like the observational place, that in the moment learning that the educator in the classroom or the student with a picture or a video can capture and put into their portfolio, which is shared privately between teacher and student. So if I click on portfolio now, I'll be brought over to my portfolio page. So I can see the 2 students have my class, and I've got to see, I've got one piece of evidence for each student. I can toggle between evidence or students here. I'm not going to focus on portfolio specifically. If I jump in here to my elementary student as an example, I've got one piece and they shared some math practice with me. So I'm going to click into the math practice and can review their work. Again, lots of options here. We're not going to focus on the details of portfolio, but looking at expectations, again, 2 options. I can add a rubric, or I can click add expectations just like I do with the assessment. We're going to look at the rubric piece now. So if I click add rubric, I'll see the rubrics I've got for this class. I've got an expectations rubric here. So I'm going to add this one in. And now I can see this rubric. Now if I expand it down, I can see, oh, here's my 4. So I'm going to click through here. So I'm going to say level 2, level 3, level 2. I can add feedback in here. That's great. I can go and save that. And again, this is pulling that criteria because I assigned those listening to understand expectations to this. Optionally here, I can also, without a rubric, just click add expectations. And let's say I also saw some reading here. So I'm going to go, I got these 4 expectations, click add. And then I can just quickly level these here as well for the student. And that will also go into the expectations mastery view for me. Okay, once more here, if I jump into another student here, I'm going to jump over to my secondary student. Here's a brainstorm they shared with me. Again, I can add a rubric, or if I just quickly want to say, okay, here's 2 expectations I'm seeing. I'm going to say this was an example of developing and organizing content. So I'm just going to check off this 1 expectation. And you know what? Some knowledge of form and style for how they set this up. So I'm going to add those 2 expectations, and I could level those here for this student and get that dashboard in that view. Okay. We're going to see what this looks like. Now there's one more I want to highlight for you, is also with the discussions tool. Totally up to you for how you use discussions, but if you observe something in here, again, this could be like a conversation, even though it's asynchronous, I can come to my discussions, see this topic here, and I've got a post from a student. Now, if I click into it, I can go and review that post and say, oh, actually, they actually made a quick video note for me here, and to listen to that. If I go to edit this topic, so I'm going to click the drop down arrow here, or via discussions, the drop down arrow, and edit this topic, you'll see a tab here for assessment. Now, you also will have this when you go and create a new topic for students to share. You can click on assessment. It's not there by default, but again, I can see I can attach a grade item to this, I can score it, or I can add a rubric here. Now I'm going to go and add rubric again and choose my expectations rubric and add this in. Now I've got that rubric attached. I'm going to click save and close. And then you can see now it concludes an assessment. I've got this new post. So if I click on it and go down here and expand this out, so I could watch this video note from the student here, listen to their take, review this, and okay, what about an assessment? Oh, I can see there's a rubrics here. I'm going to click on the expectations rubric, and I've got that color coding, and I'm going to go through and check these off and level that out. Okay. Now via the drop down here, you'll see an option to assess the topic. And this is where you're going to want to go. So in a discussion thread, the drop down arrow again, click on assess topic. And so I can see I've got not evaluated yet. I'm going to click on our secondary demo student here and expectations rubric, and look to go and level that for this student. And I'm going to throw an overall level on this too. And I can see that expectations data has come across. I could give some overall feedback here and review their post again at the bottom and click to listen to that video note. And now I'm going to publish that back to the student. Okay, we've looked at discussions, portfolio, and via assessment, the assignments tool, different areas we can add in those rubrics or those expectations. And again, you can add expectations individually or via a rubric in most of those places. What about reviewing all this now? So I'm going to click on the grades tool. And now again, it brings me to my gradebook here by default, and I can go through my setup wizard and look at, again, that more of a traditional view of a gradebook, which again has lots of value. Set up your grade items, your weighting categories, set up percentage or points, look at all of that work and go through that setup wizard for it. But again, you don't need to use the gradebook at all if you don't want. It's just there as an option for you. But what about mastery view? So now I've got this mastery tab. Again, you will not see this in the grades tool in Brightspace until you've added expectations to your class. If I click on mastery, it brings me on. Now I've got, okay, I can see this color coding and these levels. I get tracking student by student. There's a new update coming very shortly. The first time you come in here, you're going to get a pop-up for the settings for this. You can always click on, in the top right here, Mastery View Settings, and click there. And there are different ways to set this up, and even some customizations that you can use for most recent and consistent, which is another big piece of growing success. There's so much to growing success in Assessment Ontario, but for me, I'd say the kind of 2 key areas that I really focus on as an educator is, again, that triangulation of assessment, and that how do I look at both the products, the observations, and the conversations together and use all that data together in one place. And secondly is, how do I kind of use my professional judgment and take most recent and consistent consideration. I'm not going to go in detail for all of this, but again, you can have it so there's no automatic calculation, or you can set some auto pieces to give you suggestions or the recommendation for what level the student is at via Gradebook Mastery View. I want to highlight, you can always override it, okay? So again, you get to look at the data, which we'll look at here in a moment, and decide what that's going to be, okay? So if we want to hear and say go off a most common set, I could go all activities or only give me recommendations on the most recently accessed activities and say I want that to be the last 5 or the last 7 or the last 4, okay? You can choose that, and basically it's going to set that calculation based on that most recently assessed. There are options here for when more than one achievement level has the highest counts. Should I use the highest level that I saw on that or the most recent level? Or if a student makes multiple attempts on an activity, use the highest attempt, the last attempt, the average of all attempts, okay? That's with most common. You'll see options here for most recent, highest, and if you want to get a little more mathematical, a decaying average. It will give you an example and break all this down for you. Spend some time thinking about this and like looking through these and just understanding how this works. But keep in mind, you always get to review the data and then use your professional judgment. I'm just going to, if you make changes here, it's going to let you know what that looks like. I'm going to say save and recalculate. Now, again, for my class, I can see my overall expectations across the top, and I can use the scroller bar here to scroll across. If I hover over this, I see a breakdown for my class. So I can see I've got half my class is currently at a level 3 and half the class is not evaluated. And then I can see by, okay, for my secondary student here, I've got a level 3 and it's been assessed once, whereas my elementary student has not been assessed on this overall expectation yet. So really great there. Over here, I can see one of 2 options, and so you can see how many opportunities they've had, how many times they've been assessed on it. For a more detailed view, I'm just going to jump to a class that has some more data in it right now for you, and refresh this here, and go to assessment and the grades tool, and then the mastery view. So just something has a little more detail, a little more tracking and assessment pieces here for you. I'm going to let this load. So again, I can hover my class and see that breakdown for how my class is doing on this as a group. And then once that levels pop in, so I can see, oh, 3 of 4, 7 of 2, 7 of 8 opportunities, and 4 of 6 for the student. If I click into the 7 of 8, so I can see it's level 2, the I here highlights, have I published this to the student or not? So you can choose if it's published or not. You'll see options now that I have everything published here with that visible I can also retract all of it. And at the start, it's not published by default. You'll see a publish all, or you can publish specific pieces to students. I'm going to go to 4B1 here. So this is read and demonstrate and understanding of a variety of texts, and click into the specific student for Bart. What I'll see here, so I can see the select my overall achievement here, the calculation method. I'm using a decaying average in this one right now. Again, you can click the check mark to see what that means. It's telling me on average this is a 2.3 for the student here, and it's suggesting this based on my setup. I can hover across and now it's just see very quickly each task by the title, what is what and the level achieved on this overall expectation. I think this is so brilliant. If I wanted to override this, I'm looking at this, you know what, this should be a 3. I'm going to click on and click manually override here and choose a level 3. I can share overall feedback with the student on this specific expectation I'm using, or again, if you're using a custom expectation, and put that feedback in here, and I can continually come back here and update that to the student. I can see it is published, and I can scroll down here and also see this, and again, look at these and see where it came from. So I can see, oh, this is a portfolio item. This was an assignment. There's an icon for discussions too. So you can see that tracking. You get a bar graph for it for the total assessments by level, and see kind of that breakdown. Okay, I can see for level 3 that was 5 times, they had level 2 once, and they had level 4 once, and get that breakdown as well. Really, really great options there. Oh, and it's just going to let me know, hey, I made a change here. Do you want to leave it without saving? I'm going to no, down in the bottom here and click update. Okay. If I don't want the student to see this yet because it is published to them, I can also click retract down here, and now see evaluations retracted, and I can save this as a draft, and then that will be hidden from the student. And click back to go back to my mastery view here, and I can see now I've got that publish all option because not everything is published to my students. Okay, there's a lot in there. I'm really excited about this tool and to see what teachers do with it. I think there's some really great options and customizations to look at the things you want to cover and see progressions from your student by those expectations. Okay. What the last kind of piece I'll highlight here, if I go to assessment and then class progress, there's another view in here. So if I click on a student, and hover over to expectations here, and I can see there are 14 expectations available. This page will be the same for student and teacher. Okay, so the student can also go to their class progress page. If I click on expectations, and again, highlighting this as a student or teacher, click in. This is what you will both see here. So it's another way to look at this. So I can see the overall expectations. I can see where it's been assessed and the kind of that last 6 options for it, and that color grading for the levels being used. Teacher and student can do this. And again, if I wanted to review this one here, I can click into, let's go to reading. You can come here and see that option as well via class progress. The student can come here and see this as well, and then also see that overall feedback via Gradebook Mastery View. Okay. I hope you found this video helpful. Best of luck using and assessing and tracking by expectations in Brightspace, and optionally using that Mastery View in the grades tool. Thanks.